In this video, I'll give you the 4 players who will ruin your fantasy season in 2024 redraft leagues. I'm Jim Coventry of Rotowire. Look, like everybody else, I am enamored by the potential rushing ability of Jayden Daniels, and I love the collegiate season he had last year. But I want you to know this. Jayden Daniels had been a college starter since 2019. Until last year, he never threw more than 17 touchdowns in a season. Last year, great offense, great weapons, maturity, man among boys, honestly, and all of a sudden 40 touchdowns and 4 picks. That year came out of nowhere. Maybe Jayden Daniels figured it out, but we see this frequently. If a player comes on with all that experience, sometimes it's a circumstance, sometimes it's not, and sometimes the player is what he was at last year. Very skeptical. The other thing, Daniels is an accomplished high-level runner, but if you watched him in college, he was never avoiding hits. He was listed at 210 pounds for the combine. Seriously, a lot of people put on weight. They try to get those numbers looking right. If you look at Jayden Daniels, he might be 190, maybe. And if he's not going to avoid hits, get away with it in college, that's fine. In the NFL, these are men hitting you. That's a real problem if he doesn't avoid hits at this level. So between that late college breakout and the running style, which would be very, very problematic, the offensive line is not projected to be good at all in Washington. You put this all together, it's not an optimal situation for Daniels. Maybe he'll come out the gate with 3 great games, but if he gets hurt in that 4th game because of his playing style and the lack of protection, you're out. If you do draft Daniels, I urge you, take a very high-level backup soon after him. Daniels often goes as quarterback 11. Get right into that pool very shortly after. Back yourself up. If Daniels hits, great, but the red flags are really there. Running back, DeAndre Swift, Chicago Bears. I'm worried about Swift. Look, we saw Swift as a receiver in Detroit before last year, and he was dynamic, but he missed a lot of time. That was a real injury history there. And then last year, he goes to Philly. Week 1, he hardly plays, so people probably benched him in week 2. Well, week 2 and 3, Swift went off. Big yardage games. After that, 14 games the rest of the way, 4.02 yards per carry behind an amazing offensive line where defenses had to worry about A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith when he was on the field, Dallas Goedert, and even Jalen Hurts, even though his knee was banged up. Swift was very average. Broken tackle rate 48th percentile. Yards after contact 49th. From week 4 on, 1 game over 80 yards. Philly, for some reason, didn't use him as a receiver. Now, Swift goes to Chicago. What do we expect? The offensive line is decent, but it's nowhere near Philadelphia's. So there's your first problem. Second problem is the Bears potentially have 3 outstanding receivers. DJ Moore is a proper alpha in the league. Keenan Allen's been great for a long time. Rome Odunze is an amazing rookie who has potential and talent through the roof. How much are they really going to want to throw to DeAndre Swift? I know the preseason game, we saw the dump off he took for like 43 yards. That was beautiful, and he's capable of that. But how much are they really going to involve him? So there's definitely something to be considering there. All that said, I think the Bears are going to pass a little bit more. I think that Caleb Williams is going to be looking downfield when plays break down. I don't think he's looking to dump the ball to his running back. I think he's looking for more. All that said, I'm out on DeAndre Swift at ADP. If you enjoy videos like this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the Rotowire Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. Also, check out all of our fantasy football content and rankings by getting a free 2-day trial with no credit card needed. You just head to rotowire.com/Jim. A wide receiver I'm worried about this year is Stefon Diggs of the Houston Texans. And look, Stefon Diggs has been a great player for a long time. I think the biggest issue I have is that Stefon Diggs is averaging about 160 targets over the last 3 years. Now, he did have a 1,400-yard season in 2022, but in 2021, 2023, in the 1100s and the 1200s, and that was on 160 targets. And that said, you're not getting that target level in Houston. Nico Collins led the team with 109 targets last year. Tank Dell's in the equation. In a best case scenario, does Diggs get 110 targets? Maybe. That's way down from 160. And he had Josh Allen. So now if you're going from Stefon Diggs being the guy with Josh Allen, and CJ Stroud's a star, I get it. I totally get that. But Stefon Diggs is not the alpha here. Most likely it's Nico Collins. And so with the down tick and targets, is Stefon Diggs an 800-yard receiver, 900-yard receiver? Maybe. ADP, still somewhat aggressively drafted. Certainly not like he was last year and in the past, but where he's being drafted, I think the expectation would be 1,100 yards. But we just can't magically turn 60 less targets and say, okay, we're having the same production. That's the biggest problem of Stefon Diggs. And there could be some decline. He is moving into a new offense. Now he's a superstar, so that may not be a problem. And again, he has CJ Stroud, may not be a problem. But I just think it's going to be a lot to overcome on a small target share. And then tight end. We loved the season that Trey McBride had last year. And he's a really, really talented tight end. He had 825 yards and 3 touchdowns, and that was with him playing backup to Zach Ertz for 5 weeks. In those first 5 weeks, McBride only had 69 yards total. And so he had the rest of that yardage in the last 12 games. That was amazing. Here's the thing. Trey McBride was often the de facto number 1 receiver in that offense. Marquise Brown missed a lot of time. Michael Wilson missed a lot of time. And McBride just was able to feast on 8 targets per game. Full season, it extrapolates to 136, what he was seeing. That was from week 6 on. Well, it's going to be really tough to see that target level. I know the Cardinals defense will be bad, and I know they'll probably have to throw a lot. Marvin Harrison was drafted at the very top of the NFL draft. He projects to be a superstar, an alpha, a target hog, and it's likely to be the case. Michael Wilson, don't sleep on him either. He had at least 56 yards in 5 of his first 8 games, and that was with Clayton Tune, Joshua Dobbs. And then late in the season, Wilson had the injury, and he came back. First 2 games with Kyler Murray, he goose-egged, but it was clear he wasn't healthy because in the last 2 games, when he was all the way back, guess what? Averaged 65 yards. So Michael Wilson can play. He's a very good player. McBride is too, but that's the point. He may be a co-number 2 at times at Michael Wilson. It's possible also Kyler Murray gets to the outside. He rolls out well. He can use the perimeter well. And remember, McBride ended the season on a bit of a down note. He had at least 31 yards in each of his last 3 games, but he didn't go over 48 in that span. And so there's a little bit of a concern there because in those last 2 games, Michael Wilson was there. So overall, McBride's a great player, but he went from being the number 1 target, again, to being the 2A, 2B, or even the 3. And that kind of worries me and sells me off him at ADP, which is quite high.